Over my 17 years of running men's groups full time, you get to see themes and patterns over the years. And one theme that I've seen in myself and is so common for men, and it doesn't seem to matter whether it's guys that are pro athletes or hotshot investment bankers, real A-types who are out there winning, or if it's guys working at Walmart that are taking the bus and struggling to put their life together, or guys that just gone through a nasty divorce and are basically starting their lives again. Like, it's a common theme that guys feel ashamed of the way they are, and they don't really understand that you are the way you are for good reason. And I see this in my own life. I've been thinking about this a lot in my own life lately, how the things I love about myself, and the things that I don't love about myself, that I despise the most. Both of those were out of my control. The way that I am has been largely out of my control, at least in the beginning of my life. And that's it's a useful conclusion to come to, because it helps me be compassionate with myself, So I'll give you some examples. I live here on the west coast of Canada in a little surf town, a little fishing town, and people are like, why would you want to live all the way out there? And it's beautiful. Like we're in the middle of a real rainforest, the windswept sitkas and shore pines and hemlocks and cedars, the empty beaches and the beautiful long dog walks on empty trails, the surf, the small town feel of living in a town 2,000 people. There's one, it's kind of like living in The Simpsons or something, where there's one mailman and there's one bartender and there's one mechanic, and you see them all the time. I love it. But the real reason why I'm here on this rugged coast, basically 8 hours from any major city, a full day's away, I think is because my parents grew up in a similar town on the east coast of Canada with a very similar coastline. It was a very similar size where they lived. Why is it that I love walking the harbor near the boats and just having the boats, in the background? Why is it that I love coming to a place like this and sitting on a park bench and just watching the waves, Why do I love that over so many other things that I could love? And why is it that so many people don't care about these things, And I think it's just because that was in my family, And it's a beautiful thing. Surfing's like that for me too. A lot of people are like, oh, what a risk taker, you crazy? And why would you want to put yourself in that position where you can drown, or it's so much work? And the short answer is that one of the few places I saw my family play together, and especially my dad play and have fun, was the 1 week a year we go on summer vacation to this little cottage. It was super rustic and run down, but there was a little sandy beach in front of it, and my dad bought a old 1980s wind surfboard from a used sports swap kind of thing, and we eventually got an old little sailboat for $200 that was could fit one person, and some cheap masks and snorkels, and we spent all day in the water playing, trying to ride waves, trying to figure out how to use the wind, trying to figure out how to fish. And so to me, surfing isn't about, well, that looks cool, or like the palm trees on the white sandy beaches. Surfing is one of the few ways that I deeply know how to play, because I find that hard, like a lot of guys do. I find it difficult to recharge, to change channels, just to let myself play when I'm trying to provide for a family and have purpose in my work and take care of my health and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, it's one of the few ways that I really know how to let go and have a good time with myself. Hockey's the same thing for me. I know it's cliche as a Canadian, but that's all I did growing up, and it's a good reason why it still feels. I still feel so drawn to it. It's because in a world that pushes you to work and just be on your phone all the time and stuff, it's like, yeah, a lot of men are having trouble with finding play and letting themselves play without feeling guilty, or maybe they have partners that won't let themselves do it. And so that's why I surf, right? It's a way to connect with myself that I've known since I was 2 or 3. And that's fucking beautiful, right? Like, I could just sit here all day, and watch the waves roll in. There actually aren't any waves right now, which is part of the reason why I'm recording this video, because otherwise I'd be out there surfing. But, and that's a big part of me. And the cool thing is that if you can align your life with the positives, the things you love about yourself, the things you're drawn to, even if people might, and you might even judge yourself for them being frivolous or like surface level or shallow, like surfing. Like, why would you want to uproot your life from a place and go move to another place that's kind of difficult to live in to surf? That seems immature. For me, it's not. It's a very meaningful, important thing. And the decision to uproot my life from the city and to move to a place like this and to find a partner who really values this is basically a long-term investment in my well-being and myself, and it's been paying dividends. Like, we're so happy here, and I shouldn't say happy because that feels a little too high, but content. There's a grounded contentment here because I'm in line with who I am at my core and my core values that I adopted when I was a kid. Those core values don't change, That's one thing I learned over time too. I had a wise old friend of mine tell me about his divorce. And he was with another woman afterwards, an older guy. I said, well, how do you know this gal's going to work out? And he said, Sean, because she's in line with my core values. And core values don't change. Core values can be everything from how you like to spend money to how you plan to raise your kids, to religion, to health and wellness stuff, and and it can also be things that on the outside other people might not understand, like surfing or whatever else you might be drawn to, and I've aligned my life with that stuff, and that's one of my driving pillars. That's my North Star that I'm consistently trying to work towards, is trying to engineer my life or structure my life so that it's in line with how I naturally am, And so knowing this about who you naturally are and where that comes from might seem masturbatory or like a waste of time to a lot of people, But to me, like, actually sitting down in a place like this and thinking through, like, yeah, why do I love surfing? Like, why do I feel so drawn to it? Like, how does that connect to my childhood and things that I liked in the past, or maybe even things that my parents liked? There's this old saying, it's like, what are you drawn to doing in your free time? That's who you are. And I don't mean on your phone and the world of distraction we live in. I mean, if you occasionally, like, what's the subject matter, or the themes, or the areas of interest you have, and if you can lean into those and start to structure your life around them so that it's easier to do those things, even with all the chaos that comes with life, you're going to win, right? And on the flip side, the other benefit to knowing, truly understanding that who you are is for good reason is also with the things that you don't love about yourself, the things that you're trying to work on, the things you're trying to improve, the things that you detest, the things that you feel shameful around. In my life, I've had in some ways, a fairly challenging life. I came out of my childhood feeling very insecure, and as a result, made a lot of bad decisions. trying to find that security in like cool looking jobs and cool hobbies and really attractive partners and all this stuff, really seeking validation, and that sent me down a path of bankruptcy and getting sick and all these wild life experiences that were really emotionally challenging and physically taxing. And digging into why I made all those questionable moves, and God, why did I start a tech company when I'm a people person and I don't like tech? Well, it's because I wanted to look cool. So when I tell people what I did, hey, I own a record label, or hey, I do this or that, like people go, ooh, wow. And why did I need that? Well, understanding that really helped me, It took me years, but I figured out it's because I didn't feel that celebration or that unconditional support of who I am as a person and a being and my unique personality and my interests from my family growing up. And so I didn't know how to do that for myself, and so I sought it externally, And when I put those dots together, then when I caught myself seeking that validation out in the world, I was able to go, oh, damn, okay. Well, that doesn't feel very good to catch myself with that, but at the same time, it's not my fault. There's good reason why I'm wired that way and why I would choose to make decisions like that, even though they weren't good for my well-being, arguably in the short-term, medium-term, or long-term run, And I think that compassion is important because, personal growth is a long-term endeavor, and it's humbling and it's not linear. It's very up and down. It's not, there's all kinds of setbacks and humbling moments, humiliating moments. Really puts your ego in check. And so I think that's the only way I've been able to access this feelings of compassion from myself and from the younger version of myself. And maybe some of the versions or parts of myself that I don't love is to just get clear on why those things happen. Because 100% of the time I realize, oh, damn, that was kind of out of my control. I got this story from a friend that summarizes this perfectly, actually. He's a brilliant guy. Music composer, plays 5 instruments really well, can rip on any instrument, super intelligent. Anything he touches does well for the most part. And he's really taken a lot of time to learn about himself and understand about himself through therapy and through plant medicines, all kinds of things like that. And, he once we were talking about this whole thing of like being frustrated with ourselves and being frustrated that we can't change faster or more and being ashamed of ourselves. And he shared the story about when he was like 15, all of a sudden he just got stoked about swords, like Japanese swords or, swords from the Middle East, from the Middle Ages or whatever. And he just started like buying these swords, and he would convince his parents to like give him his allowance, and he'd find these swords and he'd put them up on his wall, and he'd be like, damn, that's cool. Look at these swords. And then all of a sudden, when he turned 17 or 18, all of a sudden he didn't care anymore. Sold all the swords. Never thought about swords since. Where did that come from? Where did that inspiration come from? It came from somewhere that he can't pinpoint. It disappeared for some reason he can't pinpoint. It was clearly in him. There was something about the swords that triggered some kind of emotional response. He doesn't need to look farther than that, but I think that's such a great summary for how we're wired. A lot of us people can take pride in for being a driven, high achieving person, and it's like, really, there's nothing to take pride in there. You're wired that way. That's your way of being in the world. And a lot of times it actually comes from running on dirty energy. I saw a lot of really high achieving people doing high achieving things, and when you really dig into it, over beers or sitting in hot tubs or on adventures with them, it'd be like you find out they're like that to make up for some lack they felt in their childhood or whatever, and they're not admitting that to themselves on a regular basis, or trying to adjust their life or manage that, or adjust that so they can be more well balanced. They're just running on autopilot, and that's what you don't want to be, in my opinion. I'd much rather have awareness around it, because then I have compassion for it, and if I have compassion for it, I'm more likely to be able to change it, because those parts of us that we don't love are sensitive, right? I'll give you one more example really quick, and I gotta run because it's raining. It was super pretty earlier, but now the fog's rolled in. I don't know if you can see all the fog over there. Big fog bank coming in, so I'm going to be in a little fog igloo soon. But yeah, one part about myself that I do not love and have been frustrated with for the last 20 years is my eating habits. So I have educated myself completely on nutrition over the years. I know everything about health and wellness. Somebody who's not in that industry could probably know, because I got chronically ill and had to learn all that stuff just to get better. And also I have a lot of high achieving friends and who are athletes, and I was an athlete growing up for most of my life, and I still surf a lot. And so, eating well is a really common thing to do in my circles, and yet I've struggled with it my entire life. And I've worked on it, and I've taken courses on it, and I've read books, and I've gone to meetings, and I've done therapy, and I've done plant medicines around it. And yet, when I am sad or stressed or overwhelmed, or maybe feeling a little defeated, or even just fatigued, my default, the hardwiring in my brain goes, if we had pizza and ice cream, the clouds would part and the sun would shine through, and you would have no problems whatsoever, and everything would be fine. And so I do. I'm like a drug addict, where I'll sneak out of the house, find reasons to get out of the house, to go to the corner store and get a bag of chips or whatever, or some cookies or anything. I'll overeat the most basic carbs, tortilla shells, cookies, whatever. And I found that part of myself so frustrating, because it affects my energy levels, and affects my cognitive focus energy, and it affects my ability to surf some days. Some days I almost have a junk food hangover that holds me back from doing the things I want to do, and I'm ashamed of it, because my friends and the people around me, especially in places like this that are outdoorsy and very active, they don't have that issue. I don't even like talking about it. I feel so ashamed about it. But I am that way for good reason. Very good reason. People in my life when I was growing up, that's how they handled everything. TV, food, booze. Any uncomfortable thing that pops up in their life, that's what they go to. I've watched them excuse themselves from really fun moments with other people or in positive situations to go and eat alone, or to go and sit in front of the TV alone, or to go and drink alone. And when I dug into why, when I asked those people a little bit about it without poking and prodding too much, because it's a delicate subject, the answer was, well, that's how everybody I know did it growing up too. Or maybe I was all alone, and that was the only thing I had for soothing. That was the only thing accessible to me at that time. Those are the so the old saying, everybody's doing the best they can with the tools and resources they have access to. I believe that to be true. And so digging into that, why am I this way? Why do I eat like that? Why don't I take better care of myself like that? And why does it feel like I've tried everything, and I'm so frustrated about it, and I don't want to do it anymore? But then it's hey, it's okay, It's not your fault. Lets me off the hook. There's good reason why you're like that. And since being more gentle with myself around it like that, it's been getting better. Because I think a lot of the things that we don't love about ourselves are coping mechanisms to manage parts of ourselves that are delicate and sensitive. I read this book called Becoming the Kind Father, which is actually from a local author here, but I highly recommend it. It's a short read. It's a lawyer who talks about how a lot of boys didn't have kind fathers that were supportive. They only got the sort of disciplinarian fathers, or the vacant, just not their fathers. And a lot of fathers were substance addicted or addicted to something, and that made it so that they had a tough time emotionally managing their home's lives. And it talks about how what a lot of men need is just to have somebody be supportive and encouraging in a sweet way, because they didn't get that. Like, yes, we need to be told to harden the fuck up sometimes, and to get a good swift kick in the pants sometimes, and to, tell us to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and chin up and chest out and all those things. But also, deep down, there's those parts of ourselves, the little boy, the teenager, that young adult trying to set out into the world, that young kid that didn't get what they needed emotionally, didn't get acknowledged or validated or encouraged or celebrated. And Gabor Mate talks about how if children aren't celebrated for who they are growing up, the reason this is clear research, by the way, apparently, that if children, including boys, weren't celebrated growing up, if they weren't encouraged to be who they wanted to be, and they weren't celebrated for that, especially if they're discouraged, they're much, much, much more likely to struggle with addiction and low self-worth and depression and those kinds of things, And so what I think that speaks to, and in my experience it's very true, there's these sensitive, younger parts of ourselves, emotionally, these different parts. You might have heard of parts work. That's kind of what it's talking about. And if I can be compassionate with those parts, even though I don't like how they're playing out, how those emotions are coming out. Maybe it's snapping at your partner. Maybe it's hiding from work. Maybe it's, drowning yourself in booze when the day gets hard. Like, if we can be compassionate with those parts of ourselves and put our arm around them, this is what that book talks about. If you can put your arm around that part of yourself and go, hey, I know we don't like this, but it's okay. I'm here for you. Let's find a way to do this differently. I understand, acknowledge what it feels. I understand you're feeling stressed, you're tired, or whatever, and, I get it. I'm feeling the same thing too, but come here. Let me give you a hug, and you're doing great. You're trying your best. Let's move forward. Let's try this new thing, whatever it might be, It's like being that kind father that we never had for ourselves. And I think the shortest summary of that is, you are who you are for good reason. Anyway, know that you're not alone with this. The majority of guys struggle with finding compassion for themselves, especially the parts of themselves they're having a challenge with. I've seen that in thousands of guys in men's groups over the years. The research shows the same thing. And so I really hope that you can get clear on why you are the way you are, especially for those parts you're trying to improve, the ways you'd like to show up better. And one thing I found really useful on this journey is actually being around other guys that are talking through these kinds of things, working on these parts themselves, and trying to figure out why they are the way they are in particular, and so that they can be more compassionate with themselves. Yeah, I've seen in all these men's groups, these guys working through it, and especially in the low points in my life, I found it particularly inspiring and cathartic to be around guys doing that, because it kind of gives me some guidance around how to think about myself and these parts that I don't like, and I can be empathetic with myself if I see others being empathetic around those subjects, it's a lot easier. And as a result, then guys see changes quicker. They see growth quicker. It's less lonely and isolating on the journey, so they're less anxious and less depressed. So I do encourage you, whether it be through the hundreds of men's groups we run every month at mensgroup.com, or it could be a local men's group in your area, it could be just a group of friends you have, to start talking about it with people. People can offer some great insight into why you might be that way, and they can give you be good role models for how to be gentle with yourself around those things and how to make more progress. So I hope you found this useful. If there are other topics you'd like to see me chat with you about, Post them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, experiences you've had, maybe some examples of stuff you've had trouble with and why you are that way. Maybe other men could read those and find inspiration from that. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in men's group.